Okay, so today we are going to talk about the cash secured put. I'm going to do my best to explain this to you guys in like the simplest way possible. If you are new to options, I think that's something that I'm good at. So I love to bring this kind of information to people in a very simple and easy to understand way. The other thing is some of you are going to get really excited about doing the cash secured put as soon as you watch this video. And I want to first invite you to go see another video series that I made on making great stock picks, because doing a cash secured put can be very risky if you choose a stock that is declining in value or that is going to decline in value. Okay, so be really clear about that. And the way that you become really successful with cash secured puts is making great stock picks. You want your stocks to be going up over time, and then that's what is the dream combination to really make a cash secured put work for you and work to grow your account size or get some income coming into you. So what we're going to review in this video is what it is, what a cash secured put is, what the risks are. We're going to do an example. I'm going to show you an example of what one looks like. And we're going to discuss the benefits of the trade to the seller. We'd be the seller in this. If we are selling a cash secured put, we would be the seller, and then the buyer. So somebody's buying this put from us, okay? So we're going to discuss who wins and who loses in this trade or transaction. And it's actually not as simple as a lot of you think, okay? And then number 5, how to just get out of this trade once you're in it if you have regrets, okay? Because that's important. Some of us are learning and we get ourselves into a situation that we want to get out of, and you can get out of the cash secured put, okay, as well. So let's move right along. So what is the cash secured put, okay? So it is a stock options contract, and the contract represents 100 shares of the underlying stock or ETF, okay? So you can do this on stocks or ETFs. It is a contract that a trader sells to another trader, and the seller receives premium for selling the contract or a payment. So this is usually what you're after when you sell a cash secured put. Generally speaking, you're after a couple things, and one of those things is premium. Sometimes you can also be after trying to get the stock at a lower price than it is today. We'll go into that. It also obligates you, the seller, to buy 100 shares of the stock if the stock dips, okay? It doesn't obligate you to buy it if it just dips like a little here or there, but it definitely obligates you if it dips below the contract price that you have selected. So we're going to go into that as well, okay? So let's dig in deeper. A cash secure put is a type of put option, and it's sold on a stock that you don't own yet, okay? So you can sell a put and you can buy a put. Right now we're talking about selling a put, okay? And when we sell a put, we don't own those 100 shares of the stock, but we are willing to buy those shares if the stock drops and the buyer decides to assign us those shares. So the buyer, when the stock dips, gets to decide if they want to make us take those shares on or not. And they also get to decide when, okay, within certain parameters, okay? One contract equals 100 shares. So when you are doing a cash secured put, or you are doing one, when you are selling one, okay, a lot of people say, I'm doing a cash secured put. I'm like, well, what side are you on? Are you buying or are you selling? Okay, in this situation, we would be selling a cash secured put. And if you are selling a cash secured put, you have to know that you have the capital set aside to be able to afford to buy those 100 shares of stock should you be called out and assigned and made to do so, okay? So you get paid premium upfront. Like as soon as you place the order in and that order gets a buyer, it takes seconds sometimes, just like flash. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds, okay? You get paid a premium, an amount of money for taking on the obligation to buy that stock at a predetermined strike price. That means strike price means stock price by a predetermined expiration date. As the seller of the contract, you get to choose the price you are willing to pay for the shares. So you get to choose the strike price of that contract. And you also get to choose the duration of time in the contract. Okay. Most contracts for stocks are going to end on a Friday, always, okay? Most ETFs are kind of a little bit, they have more range in them. It can be a Friday, it can be a Monday, it can be a Wednesday, depending on the ETF. Like SPY has a lot of expiration dates on it, okay? But traditionally speaking, you're looking for these contracts to expire on a Friday. Okay, there are only two outcomes that can happen from a cash secured put. One is that the stock stays above your strike price that you selected and you keep the premium, the payment, and you don't get the shares. You don't have any opportunity to get those shares and you avoided assignment of the shares, okay? The other option is that the stock dips below your strike and you are forced to buy the stock, but at a discounted cost to today's price. Okay, there are some exceptions to the rule here. Okay, so typically speaking, you would not always be assigned when the stock dips like mid-contract for a day or two or whatever in the middle of the contract. Okay, because a lot of times the buyer of the contract doesn't want to give you the shares in the middle of the contract. They want to wait till the end of the contract to give it to you, okay? And if your stock price then goes above the strike price that you sold in the contract, they can no longer give you the shares again. So they can't go back in time and say, hey, the price was lower, so I'm going to give you the shares based on that day. They can only give you them at that moment that the cost of the shares is lower. The price of the shares is lower, okay, than the expiration date. So that gets a little confusing for people, but we'll dig in a little deeper on that as well. So I think it's important to sort of like visit right now who wants what out of this contractual arrangement that we are making. So we're going to talk about basic options theory right now. So in basic options theory, the reason the seller wants to sell the contract is one of two reasons, or both of these reasons combined. Number one, they want to get paid that premium without being assigned shares. They don't believe the stock will dip, and they can therefore walk away with a premium payment and not take on these shares, not spend any money on these shares. Okay, there's a lot of people who trade puts that trade it this way. Okay, and that's their goal. Okay, they don't always win. They sometimes get assigned shares. That's the risk they're taking. Okay, so that's one sort of strategy. Number two, they get paid a premium. So they get that payment and they want to be assigned the shares because what they have done is selected a price on the contract that is a lower cost per share than the stock is today. So they're looking at this as an opportunity to get paid a premium to get shares for less than they are today. If they don't get the shares, they're sort of not crying about it either. They'll probably just keep repeating selling that contract until they do get assigned. So that is a strategy as well. Okay. Number one, it's a little bit delusional. Like eventually you're probably going to be assigned. So the only thing I can say there as like an expert level options trader is never ever sell a put on a stock that you do not want to own. If you are doing that, you are being greedy and you are not making any sense because you are not thinking this trade through. And you really do need to think this trade through, okay? The other thing that I can say here is please don't trade this trade on a stock that has a history of going down because you will get burned and there's just no way to come back from that, okay? It's just really difficult too. All right, so then who wants what on the buyer side? Okay, the reason in basic options theory why the buyer wants to buy the contract is because they simply want to insure their shares. They want an insurance policy for their shares. They are concerned that the stock will dip, and if it does, they can put those shares and those losses on another trader. So they force the other trader to take the loss. So in other words, they are buying insurance on their trade from the seller. We're going to get just a little bit more complicated here for just a second because as like a sort of teacher of this sort of thing, I want people to understand more than the basics, to expand their mindsets about what's possible with options and sort of what's really going on out there. So we just talked about what the seller wants out of the arrangement and what the buyer wants out of the arrangement. And that's basic options theory. That would be the logic. And that's what a lot of people sort of like live their lives believing, is that there's a winner and a loser in options trading with every transaction. And that is so far from the truth. It is so far from the truth. In reality, there are advanced trades that combine multiple types of options contracts. And a cash secured put is a single leg strategy, meaning this strategy of selling a cash secured put for you as a seller, it's made up of a single strategy. It's made up of a single contract, okay? But advanced options traders often have 4 to 5 options or 2 to 4 option contracts in a single trade, okay? So what I want to clarify here is that while this trade appears to have a clear winner and a clear loser at the end of the trade, that is not the case. Advanced strategies allow traders to combine options trades, and the trader on the other side may look to us like they are losing, but they could be winning, and vice versa. It's totally wild once you open your mind to this. When I really first decided to make my primary income off of options trading, I'm just going to go in a personal story here. I had sort of a friend who was quite conservative, and he's quite, no, not conservative. I mean, conservative with his money, I would say that, but he is more, has like a liberal mindset, and so do I, by the way, about people and what is fair, and like, you know, like the exchange of money on Wall Street. And he was saying like, Erica, if you're making all this money, aren't you eating other people's lunches? Is that fair that like you're making all this money, so you know how to play it, so you're sort of winning all the time, and you're creating all these losses for other people? And I'm like, that is not the way that it works. That is just not the way that it works. 2 people can win simultaneously at the same time. Because when you look at that person who was in our example of the buyer and the seller, the buyer of the contract, even though it may seem like they're losing if the contract goes away and expires worthless on them, and we, the seller, get all the premium, we can't discount the idea that that was worth it to the buyer. They wanted that insurance policy. Insurance is sold for a reason. So just keep that in mind. Keep a very open mind about this. We are not eating people's lunches. We are not doing that when we options trade. There are just risks, and there are reasons for doing things, and we can never really understand another person's reason to do something as an options trader, because we don't know their methodology and what they have going on out there. And we can't assume just because like we won that they lost. There's my little education about that. Okay, so we went off on a tangent, but let's look at an example now on Amazon, okay? So Amazon, these are prices based on August 19th. Sorry. Yeah, August 19th, 2025. So the price of Amazon was at $228.77. Okay. And you can see that this chart overall over 1 year is rising. And so like, this is the kind of thing that I would look for if I were to do a cash secured put. Like I do cash secured puts on Amazon because the chart for 1 year is rising. If the chart was going down, I would just be like, oh no, I am not doing that. Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So the next thing I'm going to bring up is the options chain and what it looks like on the Robinhood trading platform. So I really do love Robinhood for its simplicity and its simplicity also in teaching, but these options chains are just super easy to look at. What you do in there is you go to sell put, you click these buttons. It'll probably naturally come up with like buy call, I think. I'm not sure, but you go sell put, and then you get to choose from the toggle bar right here an expiration date. Okay, and on Amazon, these are going to be Fridays in the future. So what I do typically is I like to sell 3-week puts or 3-week calls. Okay, so right now I did that. I selected about 17 days out. That's a little bit short of 3 weeks. It's somewhere in the middle of 2 weeks and 3 weeks, but you see my point. And then what this green line represents is where the stock price is right now. It does a little reminder for you that it's $228.74. And these are the prices that you can, the strike prices that you can select from. Okay. And then over here, we have the options premium that you can receive from selling these options. Okay. This amount here of 805, that is $8.05 per share. And since an options contract of a cash secured put represents 100 shares, we take $8.05 times 100. And what that means is that if we sell the 235 strike price put on Amazon, the buyer of this contract will pay us $805. That's a lot of money, guys. It's a lot of money. It's also probably not the best trade, but we'll get into that in a second because we're going to do an example. Okay. All right. So let's say, okay, that we would like to buy more Amazon shares for $222.50 because right now the price again is $228.74. So $222.50 is on a sale from today, right? We can all agree on that? Okay, so we can look at the options chain to see what we can get for, and we see that what we can get for the selling this $222.50 strike price, it's right here, is $2.23 per share. And again, this contract expires on September 5th, which is 17 days away. So since this contract represents 100 shares, we will get $223 right now to sell this contract. You can see how this is insanely tempting for people, okay? Because they're like, oh, I can get my shares on sale, potentially, okay? And I can collect $223 right now for doing it. Wow, this is amazing. It is pretty amazing. Gotta be honest. Okay, so I still have this little diagram up here so that we can dig in and deeper on this. So once we set up the put contract, what we are saying to the buyer is that we are now obligated to take these shares from you and pay $22.50 for them if the shares dip at any time below $222.50 on or before September 5th. Okay? That's what we're saying. So we have to be comfortable with that because the stock could dip way lower than $222.50. Okay? All right. So if the stock rises, let's just talk about what can happen now. What can happen now? Okay? We sold this contract. We collected our $232, was it? Woohoo, we're rich. Okay. And if the stock rises or stays the same or just doesn't dip below $222.50, the option will expire worthless to, okay, and worthless means it is worthless to the buyer. It is no longer worth anything to the buyer. The buyer paid us this $223 or $232, I can't remember what that was, to insure their shares, and the stock never dipped, and we made $223 from it. If the stock dips, we may or may not be assigned during the contract, okay? It's kind of rare to be assigned in the middle of a contract, in my experience, doing this hundreds of times, when the stock just dips a little bit. Like, you know, if you've got this strike price that you selected and it's $222.50 and Amazon goes to $219 in the middle of the contract, it's unlikely that you're going to be assigned, but you can be. It can happen. If the stock dips to $195, oh yeah, you can be assigned in the middle. Oh yeah, you can. It's kind of likely that you might be, okay? But I will tell you this. You absolutely will be assigned the shares if the price is lower than $222.50 on the expiration date. That's like almost a guarantee. I've only had it happen one time where I haven't been assigned the shares. And it was super odd. I was like, what? The reason why I wasn't assigned is because there was a 9-cent share difference on the shares, and the buyer was just like, I don't care. So yeah. So those are sort of, that's what can happen. Okay, that is what can happen. It surprises people sometimes when they're just assigned on the put in the middle of the contract, because they think that the only date time they can be assigned is at the end of it, and that's not true. So be cognizant of that. Know what you're setting yourself up for. So where can it go wrong? Oh, so many places. Okay. Okay. So if the stock drops below $222.50, we have to buy the shares for whatever the stock is when it's assigned. The buyer of the contract gets to decide when and if to assign the shares. So you're kind of just like relying on like, hey, what are they feeling like today? The other thing is too, is that you have to remember that who you are selling these contracts to is often institutions, and they're trading these things with like computers and algorithms. So the computer is assigning you stuff. So it's nothing personal. It just is what it is. It's just money. It moves around. And the game of Wall Street is to make money. So they're just going to do it any way they can. Okay. So if the stock price at assignment, like when they decide to assign those shares at you because the stock dropped, let's say the stock drops to 215, you were just forced to buy the shares for $222 per share and 50 cents when they are now worth 215. So you can see at this very moment, you have an overall trade loss here. Okay, so like selling a bunch of cash secured puts is really fun, like when you're just collecting premium and never getting called out. But when the market pulls back dramatically, and we are having a bit of a pullback today, but not in Amazon. But some of these newer stocks, we're having a big pullback today. And when you see your account value pull back and then you're being assigned shares at the same time because people are putting the shares on you, you're like, oh gosh, this doesn't feel nice. So that's something that you need to consider. Okay. Okay. So let's explain who loses what in these transactions with this example. So if the stock drops to 215, okay, we, as the seller of the contract, have to buy these shares for 222.50 because that's the strike price in the contract, but they are now worth 215. So, okay, that's just like an instant loss of $750 because that's just what the math is, all right? We had to buy these shares for $22,250, but they're now worth $21,500, which is a $750 loss, capital loss on the shares, okay? But remember that the seller paid us $223 in premium for the contract. So their profit and loss on the trade our seller profit and loss on the trade is boosted up by the $223 that we received. Are you guys following that? So we lost $750 in capital, but we are up to $123 in premium. So therefore our kind of gross loss at this point in time is $527. Now, this isn't the end of the story here, okay? Like this isn't all said and done, okay? The good news is that the seller has some things they can do to prevail later in that. But for right now, I just want to show you where we're at as soon as the assignment happens, because there are ways that we can sort of make really clever trades after this assignment happens to just sort of like come back winning. Okay, so another question that I get a lot is, can the seller lose everything? No, not really. It's possible, but it's almost impossible at the same time. So like, let's just think this through. The premium payment is $223 is ours forever. Like nobody can ever take that away from us. That's just done. It's a done deal. Okay. The max loss you can make on the stock is the max amount that the stock can lose. So if the stock goes to zero or close to it, the seller can lose a lot. But a stock going to zero is highly unlikely, especially for a stock like Amazon. Okay, so you just gotta like really do a gut check on like how low do you think Amazon stock can go, and like figure that out before you set up this trade. Because if you think Amazon can lose half of its value in a 3-week time period, like this seems like a stupid trade to do. Okay, obviously. But if you think Amazon can only lose like 10% or 20% of its value, and you think over time Amazon can go up, it's not that big of a deal to be assigned shares at a price that's that low right? Because if you just hold Amazon for a longer period of time, the odds are it's going to rise because Amazon has a chart that's rising. So you kind of have to like think these things through for yourself, and that's why stock selections are so important. So you'd be wise to ask yourself, how much could this stock go down, and get a gut check on if this is a good idea or not. This is one of the reasons I only trade the best stocks on the market, is because I feel like if I'm assigned on a cash secured put, time is on my side as long as I'm willing to wait for those stocks to retrace or go back up in value. And that has worked for me for many years as a trader. So I'm pretty confident about this method. If I was trading stocks that were junk, I would be very unconfident with this method. I would think it was very dangerous. So again, you got to choose good stocks. So who wins and loses what on the buyer side? Okay, so if the stock drops down to R215, the buyer chooses to get paid that $222.50 per share because they have the insurance policy they bought for us that allows them to do this. The stock dropped to 215, so they saved themselves a $750 loss, and they paid $223 to do that. They're also done with this trade. They don't own the shares anymore. They're done. It's over. Okay, we own the shares. We have to deal with the loss. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go back to the seller because I told you guys, like, hey, there's a way to come back from this. There's a way to come back from this with a good stock pick. There certainly is. Okay, so what can we do? Well, number one, the easiest thing we can do and the simplest and laziest thing we can do is just wait for the shares to rise again. On a great stock, they're probably going to. That's just, this stock is in the Magnificent Seven. The Magnificent Seven usually rises outside of Tesla, which is just kind of a bummer for Elon, I guess. All right. Don't feel sorry for him though. Okay. And number two, if you know how to trade the wheel strategy, which is selling a covered call after you get assigned on a cash secured put, you can collect more premium and sell a covered call afterwards and start the wheel strategy. So if you don't know anything about the wheel, there will be videos coming out on that. You can certainly look up other YouTubers who have created wheel videos as well and see how that works. Stock picks, again, are so vitally important to being successful with the cash secured put, and making bad stock picks is very difficult to recover from when you sell a cash secured put, okay? If the stock continues to dip over time, the hole we dug only gets bigger. It just only gets worse. It doesn't get any better. I mean, we can think that we can make up for some losses by selling covered calls on those shares we now own and doing the wheel strategy, but the wheel cannot and will not ever catch up with shares that keep declining in value. How do I know this? Because I've tried. Okay? I am only telling you this because I love you. Okay? And I don't want to see you make the same mistakes that I have made. I think that during like the pandemic time, I was trading Chewy, and Chewy kept going up and up and up. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. I will sell some cash secured puts on this. Okay. Got assigned when Chewy dropped. Guys, I think I spent 2 years selling covered calls on Chewy to try to just get to my cost basis on the shares. And it was so incredibly boring. And I was like, this is going to take me like 4 years to get here. I quit and I sold the shares just at a loss. And it was not an insanely huge loss because I sold covered calls for 2 years, but what a rigmarole. Like, it was just not fun. And I don't want you to have that sort of experience. So that's why I'm sharing that stock picks are so vitally important. And if you want to know how to pick my great stocks, how to pick great stocks and the stocks that I like to trade, I will tell you exactly how. First of all, there's going to be a link down in the description of this video that takes you into the first video in a series. It's on a playlist of how to make great stock picks. For me, there is a system to this. So here's an overview of my rules. Stocks must have rising 5-year, 1-year, and 3-month charts. Okay? People often say to me, well, what if that 3-month chart isn't rising? I'm like, then I'm not selling a cash secured put on it because the stock is telling me it wants to go lower potentially. And I don't want to be there to pick up, I don't want to be there to insure other traders. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make money. Okay. If the 1-year chart is down, am I selling cash secured put on it? No. If the 5-year chart is down, am I selling a cash secured put? No. No, 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 no. They all have to be green, okay? The stock must be a monopoly or an industry dominator. So I'm only trading the biggest, largest companies out there. That's it. That's my rule. And it must have great rising revenue and profits for 4 years in a row. You can find out how to look up that information on that video series that I just told you about that's linked in the description. And then the company must be a company that institutional traders love to own. So it's not enough that I think the company is great. It's never enough, okay? It also has to be a favorite of the institutions. Is there any way out of this cash secured put trade once I place it? Am I stuck here forever? Yes, there's a way out of it. There sure is. You have two choices. The first choice is to repurchase the contract that you sold. If this stock has lowered in value, though, it will likely cost you more premium than the premium you received to close it. Okay? It might cost you a lot more. It might cost you 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much. So this is like why you want to be very choosy and picky about the cash secured puts that you sell, because closing them when a stock is lowering is a losing trade, and we don't like losing. Okay? All right. The second choice is rolling out. Rolling out involves buying the contract you sold back and then exchanging it for a new contract with a different strike price and a different expiration date. This can delay the time you have to potentially be assigned shares or not, and that time can be used to your advantage, okay? It can also just end up delaying the inevitable assignment of shares if your stock pick was a bad one. Okay, so you guys can see how important it is to choose the right stock. You want to choose the right stock on option number 1, because you really want to say to yourself, if the stock drops and I'm just selling the put to get premium, and that was my intention, I'll take the shares. I'll take the shares and then do cover calls on them, because I don't want to close for a loss, because that doesn't make any sense. I just would rather take those quality shares of quality company stock rather than create a loss right now and then trade covered calls on the shares that I own, okay? That's usually that's a smart backup trade if you're doing this on a really great company. And that's why you have to do it on a great company. The second choice is one of those things that, again, it's like, if you want to roll this out because you just want to take in more premium and delay like assignment or whatever, just because you're trading and you're just trying to get premium right now, great. But you may also have to take assignment. So make sure that the stock that you're selling a cash secured put on is a stock that you are willing to own those shares on and take for that price, because it very well could happen. It very well could happen, and I just want you to be prepared for that. Okay, and then that is a wrap, okay? So choosing great stocks with rising charts is essential to winning with the cash secured put. It's a great trade that has a lot of potential as a rinse and repeat strategy. My personal thoughts, though, are that far too many traders dig on in this trade too much and could get better results from other trades. Yes, totally. And I'm going to do more on that in an upcoming video. So I'm going to compare the cash secured put to a trade that I think is much better, and I will give you all the reasons as to why.